The church was full of flowers, but all I could smell was betrayal. The air was heavy with the sound of sobbing. Yet my heart froze when I heard the words that cut deeper than any knife. It was my own daughter, my flesh and blood, leaning close to me at the front pew during my husband's funeral. Her face was twisted in anger, her voice a hiss that no one else could hear. "Hurry up and die already," she whispered, as though my existence was nothing but a burden to her. I froze. My hands trembled on the cane I leaned on. My eyes stung, not from the tears I had been holding back for my dear husband, but from the shock of hearing such words from the child I raised, the child I sacrificed for. At that very moment I felt something inside me break. I turned slowly to look at her, hoping I had misheard, hoping my ears had betrayed me and not my daughter. But her cold eyes met mine, and I knew she had meant every word. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. But instead, I sat there, still as stone, because I knew this moment would change everything. What she did not know was that I had a choice to make. And what she did not expect was that her cruel words would cost her everything she thought she had already gained. That day, as the casket was lowered into the ground, I quietly decided she would never see a single penny from my will. But you see, this story did not begin here, in the church, among flowers and grief. No, it began long before, with love, with sacrifice, with the kind of hope only a mother can carry for her child. And if you will sit with me, I will tell you how we got here, step by step, through the highs and the lows, until the moment my own daughter cursed me at her father's funeral. Because life has a way of showing us the truth. Sometimes too late, sometimes at the cost of family, and sometimes in ways we never could have imagined. My name is Margaret, though most people call me Grandma Maggie. I was not always a widow sitting alone in a silent house. Once, I was a wife, a mother, a woman with dreams so large I believed I could pass them on to my children like gifts wrapped in gold. I married young. My husband, John, was the love of my life. He had strong hands, a warm laugh, and eyes that saw the good in everyone. Together, we built a home from scratch, brick by brick, dream by dream. We did not have much, but we had enough, and in that enough, we found joy. When our daughter, Claire, was born, I thought the heavens themselves had opened to bless us. She had rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes, and a cry that filled the house with life. I swore that day I would give her everything I never had. And I did. I worked nights at the factory. I cooked, cleaned, and still managed to sew her clothes when we could not afford new ones. John picked up extra shifts, his back aching, just so Claire could have what she wanted. At first she was sweet. She would sit on my lap, rest her head on my shoulder and say, "Mommy, you're my best friend." Those words kept me alive during the darkest nights. But somewhere along the way, things began to change. It started small. A slammed door here. A rude word there. Then came the lies, the friends who pulled her into trouble, the arguments that left me crying in my own kitchen. John said, "She's just growing up. She'll find her way." But I knew better. I felt the cold distance growing, and I feared what it would mean for us. Still I hoped. A mother always hopes. When Claire became an adult, that hope turned into disappointment more often than joy. She demanded money, never asking but insisting as though it was her right. She wanted the newest clothes, the latest phone, vacations with friends she barely knew. And when we said no, she called us selfish, cruel, even useless. Yet despite it all I kept giving. Why? Because she was my daughter. Because a mother's heart is foolish and strong all at once. But life has a way of showing you the truth, and sometimes it does it in the harshest way possible. Years later John fell ill. It was a slow sickness, the kind that drained his strength little by little until even standing up became a battle. I cared for him day and night. I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, held his hand when he was too weak to lift his own. Claire. She barely visited. When she did, she rolled her eyes, sighed loudly, and muttered about how boring it was to be around old sick people. She never saw the love in his eyes when he looked at her, the hope that she might sit with him, even for an hour. One night, when John was asleep, I sat by his bed and wept. "Why is she like this?" I whispered into the dark. "Where did we go wrong?" But John, even in his sickness, smiled weakly and said, "Don't give up on her. Maybe one day she'll see." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe there was still good in her. But the day of his funeral proved otherwise. The church bells rang. The casket gleamed under the soft light. I clutched my cane and whispered prayers for the man I had loved all my life. And then, at the moment when my heart was already broken, Claire leaned in and spat her poison into my ear. "Hurry up and die already." I bit my lip so hard it bled. My whole body shook, but I did not reply. Not yet. Because sometimes silence is louder than words. And in that silence I made a promise. Promise she would never see coming. The weeks after the funeral were quiet but heavy. People brought casseroles, pies, flowers, things meant to comfort, but none of them filled the hole John had left in me. Claire showed up once or twice, not to check on me but to ask about money. "When do we get Dad's inheritance?" she asked, sitting at my kitchen table with her phone in her hand.
Ist daher?
"Your father didn't have much," I said softly. "But what he did have, I'm deciding what to do with." She scoffed, stood up and said, "Well, don't forget I'm your only child. Who else are you gonna leave it to?" Her arrogance made my stomach turn, and that was the moment I knew for sure I would leave her nothing. But how? And to whom? That was the question that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, while her cruel words replayed in my head. One night, as the rain poured outside, I sat at my kitchen table with John's old papers spread before me. His will, our savings, the house deed. And then suddenly I had an idea. An idea that would not only take everything from Claire, but also teach her the lesson she had refused to learn all her life. A lesson about love, about respect, about what truly matters. I smiled through my tears because I knew what I had to do. But just as I picked up the phone to call the lawyer, I heard a loud bang on the door. My heart jumped. The clock showed midnight. Who could it be at this hour? I stood slowly, gripping my cane, and moved toward the door, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. I opened it, and what I saw on the other side made my heart stop. The thunder rolled outside as I pulled the door open, my cane shaking in my hand. The porch light flickered, and there stood a figure drenched in rain. For a second my old heart almost gave up. I thought it was John, come back from the dead, standing tall in the storm. But no, this was not John. It was a man, tall and broad, his clothes soaked through, his eyes burning with a strange urgency. "Mrs. Margaret?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "Yes," I whispered, tightening my grip on the cane. "Who are you? What do you want at this hour?" He glanced over his shoulder, as though he feared someone was following him, then leaned close. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered. "But I had to come. It's about your husband, and your daughter." My breath caught in my throat. My knees almost gave way. "What do you mean?" I asked, though every part of me screamed not to let this stranger in. "Please," he said, desperation in his eyes. "I can't explain out here. May I come in?" Every mother's instinct told me no. But curiosity, and something deeper, something warning me this man carried truths I needed, made me step aside. The moment he entered, dripping water onto my floor, the storm outside seemed to grow wilder, as if nature itself wanted to keep me awake that night. He sat heavily on the chair by the door, his hands trembling. "Who are you?" I asked again. "My name is Daniel," he said. "And before you ask, no, I'm not here to hurt you. But I know things. Things about your daughter, Claire." At the sound of her name my stomach turned. "What about her?" I whispered. He leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. "She owes people. Dangerous people. And she's been making promises she cannot keep. She's been talking about your house. About the money she'll inherit. She's using your name, Mrs. Margaret. She's using you as a ticket out of trouble." The room spun. My cane slipped from my hand, clattering against the floor. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that Daniel was lying. But deep inside I knew. I knew because it sounded exactly like something Claire would do. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because if she can't pay them soon, they'll come for you." The thunder cracked so loud it rattled the windows. I sat back in my chair, my heart hammering. My own daughter using my name, my home, my life as a shield for her debts. And in that moment I realized, this was bigger than a cruel whisper at a funeral. This was betrayal with teeth. The storm raged until morning, but I could not sleep. Daniel left just before dawn, warning me to be careful, promising he would be in touch. I made myself a cup of tea, my hands shaking so badly I spilled half of it on the counter. I kept replaying his words. They'll come for you. How could Claire do this to me? How could she be so reckless, so heartless? But then as I sat alone, staring into the steam rising from my cup, a small voice inside me said, "You knew. You knew who she was becoming long ago. You just didn't want to admit it." And the truth of that broke me. Later that week, Claire came over. She didn't knock, she never knocked. She just barged in, her heels clicking on the wooden floor, her perfume filling the house. "Mom," she said sharply, "we need to talk." I looked up from the papers on the table. John's will, the house deed, the bank accounts. I quickly covered them with a napkin. "What is it, Claire?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed loudly, dropped her purse on the chair, and crossed her arms. "I need money. Right now." I swallowed hard. "For what?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "You have it. Dad left you the house. The savings. You don't need it all. You're old, Mom. You can't even spend that much anymore. Just sign something over to me, and I'll be out of your hair." My chest tightened. "And what will you do with it?" She rolled her eyes. "None of your business." But I knew. Oh, I knew exactly what she wanted it for. "You're in trouble, aren't you?" I whispered. Her face froze. For a split second, guilt flashed in her eyes. Then she laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Trouble? No. I'm just living my life. And you, sitting here alone in this old house, should be grateful your daughter even cares to visit." Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Claire," I said softly, "this house, it's not just bricks and walls. It's your father's sweat, my tears, the laughter of our family. It's not a prize to be cashed in. It's our legacy." She groaned and slammed her hand on the table. "Legacy? Please. What good is a legacy if you're dead? You can't take it with you, Mom. Just sign it over to me already." I stared at her, my heart breaking all over again. And in that moment I remembered John's weak smile, his words from his sickbed. Don't give up on her. But what if giving up was the only way to save myself? That night, after she stormed out, I sat in the living room with the lights off. The house was silent, but my thoughts were loud. I couldn't stop hearing Daniel's warning. "Dangerous people. They'll come for you." I knew then that my decision about the will wasn't just about teaching Claire a lesson. It was about survival. But how to protect myself? And who to trust? That was the question twisting my mind. I thought about calling the lawyer right away. I thought about calling the police. But something held me back. Something or someone. Because when I went to the door to lock it for the night, I found a note slipped under the mat. It was wet from the rain, the ink smudged, but I could still read the words. "You have 1 week. Pay her debt. Or pay the price." My hand shook so hard the paper nearly tore. And that was the moment I realized. I wasn't just dealing with a selfish daughter anymore. I was dealing with danger that could swallow us both. The paper trembled in my hand as though it carried the storm itself. The words blurred from my tears, but I did not need to read them twice. "You have 1 week. Pay her debt. Or pay the price." The price. I sank into the chair, my chest tight, my breath shallow. At first I thought it was just another cruel prank. But deep inside I knew it was real. Daniel's warning wasn't just a story, it was the truth. My daughter's carelessness had dragged me into a pit I never asked to fall into. And now, even in my old age, I wasn't just fighting loneliness. I was fighting for my life. The night stretched long and heavy. I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. The wind against the window, the ticking of the clock, even the creak of the old floorboards. My heart thudded with one thought. What if they come tonight? When morning finally came, pale and cold, I felt years older. I made myself a cup of tea, but it tasted like nothing. My mind was on the note, on the people behind it, and most of all, on Claire. She didn't know what kind of fire she was playing with. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care if I burned. That afternoon, I forced myself to call Claire. My hands shook as I dialed her number. She answered after the third ring, her voice sharp as ever. "What now, Mom?" she said. I tried to stay calm. "Claire, I need to talk to you." It's serious. It's always serious with you, she muttered. Can't you just relax for once? Claire, I said firmly. Did you borrow money from dangerous people? The line went silent. For a moment, I thought she had hung up. Then she laughed. A laugh that chilled me to the bone. Dangerous? Oh, Mom, you watch too many movies. This isn't a joke. I snapped, louder than I meant to. Someone came to me. Someone left a note. They said if I don't pay your debt, I will pay the price. Her voice grew cold. You weren't supposed to know about that. My heart sank. So it's true. She sighed. It's nothing I can't handle. They won't touch you. They just want to scare you. Besides, if you'd just give me the money, this would all be over. Her words hit me like knives. She wasn't worried about me. She wasn't even worried about herself. All she cared about was the money. I felt my voice break. Claire, do you even love me? There was silence. Then she muttered, Of course I do. But love doesn't pay bills. And with that, she hung up. I sat in the quiet house, the phone heavy in my hand. My daughter had admitted it. She had dragged me into her mess, and she wasn't sorry. A part of me wanted to give up. To hand her the money, the house, everything, just to keep the shadows away from my door. But another part of me, the part that had raised her, sacrificed for her, and suffered her cruelty, refused. If I gave her what she wanted, she would never learn. And worse, I would lose myself in the process. Still, the fear was real. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Every night, I locked the doors twice and slept with the phone by my bed. And yet, through the fear, I began to plan. If Claire wanted everything, she would get nothing. And if these dangerous people thought I was weak, they were wrong. I was old, yes. But I was not broken. Not yet. 2 days passed. Then came the second warning. I had gone to the market that morning, trying to distract myself by buying apples and bread. The sun was shining, the world looked normal. But inside, I felt anything but. When I came back, there it was. A single black feather, pinned to my front door with a knife. My knees almost buckled. I looked around, but the street was empty, quiet, too quiet. I pulled the feather free with trembling hands and rushed inside, locking the door behind me. This was no prank. This was a message. They were watching me. That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, the feather lying on the table like a curse. I thought about calling Daniel, but I didn't even know if I could trust him. What if he was part of it? What if letting him into my house had been the biggest mistake of all? At last, I sat down at the table, pulled John's old papers toward me, and whispered, John, I wish you were here. I don't know what to do. The house creaked as if answering me, and in that silence I made a decision. I would not wait for them to strike. I would not live in fear. Tomorrow I would go to the lawyer. Tomorrow, I would rewrite my will. And tomorrow, I would begin to fight back. But just as I stood up to put the papers away, I heard it. The sound of glass shattering in the back of the house. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. Someone was inside. The sound of breaking glass tore through the silence like a scream. My body stiffened, my heart thundering so loud I thought whoever was in the house could hear it. I gripped my cane tight, though I knew it was no real weapon. My first thought was to call the police, but my phone was on the kitchen counter too far away. My second thought was John. If only he were here, strong and steady. But he wasn't. It was just me, an old woman in a dark house, and someone moving through the shadows where they had no right to be. The floorboards creaked. I heard slow, heavy footsteps from the back hallway. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to be quiet. They wanted me to hear. I swallowed my fear and forced my voice to steady. Who's there? I called, though my voice cracked. No answer. Just the sound of the steps drawing closer. I shuffled backward until my legs hit the chair, my cane shaking in my grip. The darkness seemed to close in on me, my mind racing with every warning Daniel had given me, every cruel word Claire had spoken. Then, from the shadows, a figure appeared. Tall, broad shoulders, a mask covering his face. I gasped, clutching the chair for balance. What do you want? I whispered. The masked man didn't speak. He just pointed at me, then pointed at the table where John's papers lay scattered. The will, the house deed, The savings. My throat went dry. No, I said, shaking my head. You won't get it. He took a step closer. My knees trembled, but I refused to sit down. And then, just as his hand reached toward me, there was another sound. The front door slammed open. Leave her alone, a voice roared. It was Daniel. The masked man spun around, fists clenched. Daniel rushed forward, shoving him back toward the hallway. They struggled, crashing into the walls, knocking down picture frames. My husband's photo fell and shattered on the floor. Stop! I cried, but neither of them listened. The masked man broke free and bolted toward the back door. Daniel chased him, but by the time they reached the yard, he had vanished into the stormy night. Daniel stood in the doorway, panting heavily, rain dripping from his hair. He turned to me, his eyes burning. Are you hurt? He asked. I shook my head, though my legs nearly gave out beneath me. No, but he was here. He wanted the house, the will. He wanted everything. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. I told you they wouldn't stop at threats. I stared at him, my heart pounding with fear and confusion. Why are you helping me, Daniel? Who are you really? For a long moment, he said nothing. His face was hard, unreadable. Then finally he sighed. Because I owe your husband, he said quietly. And because Claire doesn't know what kind of fire she's playing with. If you don't fight back now, they'll destroy you. My minspoon. Oh, my husband? What did that mean? But before I could ask, he stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. They're not after just money anymore. They want control. And they'll use your daughter to get to you. I felt my knees weaken. My own child, not only betraying me but dragging me into the hands of people who saw me as nothing more than a key to wealth. I gripped Daniel's arm, desperation in my eyes. What do I do? He looked me straight in the face, his voice cold and certain. You cut her off. From the will. From the house. From everything. And you do it now. The next day I sat in the lawyer's office. The rain had stopped, but the sky was gray, heavy with unspoken storms. My lawyer, Mr. Peterson, looked at me with kind, worried eyes as I slid the papers toward him. You're certain, Mrs. Margaret? He asked gently. This is a big decision. To remove your only child from the will. Are you sure? I nodded, though my throat was tight. Yes. I've thought about it long enough. She doesn't deserve it. She doesn't care about me. She only cares about the money. If I leave it to her, it won't just ruin her. It'll ruin everything John and I built. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Very well. I'll prepare the documents. As he wrote, my heart ached. This wasn't the life I had dreamed of. I had imagined leaving behind love, a legacy, something for my daughter to cherish. Instead, I was leaving her nothing but the consequences of her own choices. But sometimes love isn't about giving. Sometimes it's about refusing. And I refused to let my daughter's greed destroy me. When I got home, the house felt heavier than ever. I made myself a pot of soup, but I couldn't eat. I just sat at the table, staring at the black feather still lying there, the broken frame of John's picture on the floor. My mind drifted to Claire. How would she react when she found out? Would she scream? Would she cry? Or would she hate me forever? The thought made my chest ache, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't let guilt undo what was necessary. I was still sitting there when the phone rang. The sound made me jump. Slowly I picked it up. Hello. First there was only silence. Then a voice I knew too well. Claire. Mom, she said, her tone icy. I heard what you did. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you mean? You went to the lawyer, she hissed. You cut me out of the will. My blood ran cold. How did she know already? Claire. I began, my voice trembling. I had to. You brought danger to my door. You. But she cut me off, her voice sharp as a knife. You're going to regret this, Mom. You think you can just erase me? You can't. You're old. You're weak. And without me, you're nothing. My breath caught. Claire, please. But the line went dead. I sat there in silence, the receiver heavy in my hand. And for the first time I realized something terrifying. The greatest danger wasn't just the people outside my door. It might be the daughter I had raised under my own roof. The silence after Claire's voice was louder than any storm. Her words echoed in my head like a curse. You're going to regret this, Mom. I set the phone down slowly, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. My own daughter, my only child, had spoken to me like an enemy. The girl I once held in my arms, the baby I sang to sleep, the little girl who once called me her best friend, was now someone I barely recognized. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the floor, the sound of the clock ticking in the kitchen marking every second of my fear. I wanted to believe she was bluffing, that her anger would pass. But something in her voice told me otherwise. She wasn't just upset. She was dangerous. The next few days, I moved through the house like a ghost. I checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. I pulled the curtains closed even in the middle of the day. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart jump. Daniel came by once to check on me. He brought groceries and asked if I was eating. "You look pale," he said, concern in his voice. I forced a weak smile. "I'm fine. Just tired." But he could see through me. What happened? I hesitated. Should I tell him about Claire's phone call? Should I admit that my daughter had become my greatest fear? At last I whispered, "She knows. She knows I cut her out of the will." And she threatened me. Daniel's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. "I told you she's in deeper than you think. If she's making threats herself, then she's already working with them. She's not just a daughter anymore, Margaret, she's a danger." The words stung, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. I lowered my eyes. "She's still my child." Daniel sighed, kneeling so his eyes met mine. "Sometimes the people we love most can hurt us the worst. But you need to protect yourself. Don't forget that." That night I sat in bed staring at the ceiling. His words haunted me. Protect yourself. But how does a mother protect herself from her own daughter? I thought of John again. If he were here, what would he say? Would he tell me to forgive Claire, to hold on to hope like he always did? Or would he finally admit what I already knew? That sometimes love isn't enough? Tears slipped down my cheeks as I whispered into the dark, "John, I don't know what to do." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. And deep inside I felt something shift. I had spent my whole life giving to John, giving to Claire, giving until there was nothing left for me. But now I would have to take something back. The next morning, I decided to take a walk into town. I needed air, space to think. As I stepped out of the house, I felt eyes on me again. I glanced around, but the street was quiet. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. At the bakery, the shopkeeper, Mrs. Allen, smiled warmly. "Maggie, it's good to see you out. You've been keeping to yourself too much." I forced a smile. "Just been tired." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I saw your daughter the other day. She didn't look too happy." My stomach tightened. "Where?" "Near the old motel by the highway," Mrs. Allen whispered. "She was with some men. Rough-looking types." I didn't want to stare, but... Her voice trailed off, but she didn't need to finish. I already knew. Claire wasn't just in trouble. She was swimming in it. I bought a loaf of bread and hurried home, my hands shaking as I clutched the bag. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat at the table staring at the will papers again. I had signed them. It was done. Claire was out. But now, I wondered, would she stop at threats? I didn't have to wait long to find out. It was close to midnight when the knock came. Not a polite knock. A heavy, pounding one that shook the door. I froze in my chair, my soup still half-eaten in front of me. The pounding came again, louder this time. "Open up," a voice barked. Not Claire's. A man's voice. Deep. Angry. I clutched my cane, my heart racing. The pounding grew so fierce I thought the door would break. And then, through the wood, I heard the words that turned my blood cold. "She told us you'd pay. Open the door, old woman, or you won't live to see the morning." The pounding rattled the whole door, making the walls shake. My breath caught in my throat as the man's voice thundered again. "She told us you'd pay. Open up, old woman, or you won't live to see the morning." My cane slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. My knees were weak, my heart beating so loud it drowned out every sound except that voice. "She told us you'd pay. Claire." Even in my terror, the truth stabbed me deep. My daughter had sent them here. My own child had pointed them to me like a wolf leading hunters to prey. The pounding came again, harder this time. The door groaned under the force. I backed away, trembling, whispering prayers under my breath. My eyes darted to the phone on the counter, but it was too far. If I made a move for it, they'd hear me. Then suddenly silence. The pounding stopped. I froze, listening. For a moment I thought maybe they had gone. Maybe they were bluffing. Maybe. And then I heard it. The scrape of metal against the lock. They were trying to break in. I stumbled back into the hallway, gripping the wall for balance. My old legs carried me as fast as they could toward the back door. But before I reached it, I heard glass shatter. They had broken a window. They were inside. My chest tightened, my breath shallow. I felt trapped in my own home. The home John and I had built with love, now invaded by shadows and greed. I ducked into the small closet by the stairs, pulling the door shut as quietly as I could. My heart hammered so hard I was sure they could hear it. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the house. Low voices muttered, angry and sharp. She said the old lady keeps the papers here. She better be right. If not, she's gonna pay too. Claire's voice wasn't among them, but her betrayal was. She had traded me like a coin, sold me out for her debts. Tears slid down my cheeks, but I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Minutes felt like hours as they searched the house. Drawers slammed. Papers rustled. One of them cursed when he knocked something over. I prayed they wouldn't think to check the closet. But then, the floorboards creaked closer. Heavy steps. Too close. The closet door rattled. Check in here, one voice said. My heart stopped. I clenched my fists, whispering to John in my mind, if this is the end, hold me in heaven. The handle turned. And then a crash rang out from the kitchen. The men cursed. What was that? The door swung back, but instead of opening fully, the footsteps ran toward the kitchen. Pots clanged, something shattered again. I stayed frozen, barely daring to breathe. It felt like forever before the sounds faded. A door slammed, then silence. I stayed in that closet until my legs went numb. Only when the dawn light crept through the crack under the door did I finally dare to step out. The house was wrecked. Drawers pulled open, books tossed aside, the table overturned. My safe home looked like a battlefield. But worse than the mess was the truth it carried. Claire had brought them here. Later that morning Daniel came by. The moment he stepped inside, his face darkened. They were here, he muttered, scanning the wreckage. I nodded weakly, my body still trembling. They wanted the papers, they said. Claire promised them. Daniel cursed under his breath, then knelt beside me. You can't stay here, Margaret. You're not safe. I shook my head. This is my home. John built this house with his hands. I can't leave it. His eyes softened, but his voice was firm. Your life is worth more than bricks and walls. If you stay, they'll come back. And next time they won't just search. I gripped his arm, desperation in my voice. Daniel, what do they want with me? Why not just go after Claire? He looked away, his jaw tight. Because you have something she doesn't, stability, respect, a name worth something. And they think if they break you, they'll control everything. His words sank like stones in my chest. They didn't just want money. They wanted me broken. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in John's old chair, clutching a picture of him, the lamp glowing softly beside me. My thoughts were heavy, tangled with fear and heartbreak. I thought about Claire as a little girl, running barefoot in the yard, laughing as John chased her with a garden hose. I thought about her birthday parties, her school plays, the way she used to hug me tight. Where had that child gone? How had she turned into someone who could sell her own mother's safety for cash? And yet, even through my anger, my heart ached with love. Because no matter what she had done, she was still mine. But love doesn't erase betrayal. And betrayal has consequences. It was near midnight again when the phone rang. The sound made me jump. I picked it up with shaky hands. Hello. Silence. Then a familiar voice. Mom. Claire. Her voice was soft this time, almost broken. Mom, I need to see you. Please. My heart twisted. Was this real? Or another trap? Why Claire? I asked carefully. Her voice cracked. Because they're after me too. And I don't know where else to go. Mom, I need to see you. Please. Claire's voice quivered through the phone like a broken string. For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat locked up, torn between anger and worry. I squeezed the receiver tighter. Why should I believe you, Claire? After what you've done. There was silence. Then a choke sob. Because they turned on me too. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. I made a mistake, Mom. Please. I don't know where else to go. Her words pierced me like a thorn in my heart. Every instinct told me not to trust her. Not after the men who had broken into my home. Not after hearing them say she told us you'd pay. And yet she was still my daughter. My child. I sat there for a long moment, the clock ticking loudly beside me. Finally I whispered, "Where are you?" She gave me an address. A small, run-down motel by the highway. "Don't hang up," I said quickly. "Stay on the line." But the call clicked dead. I sat there, staring at the phone, my hands trembling. Should I go? Was it a trap? Or was this the last chance to save my daughter from the dark hole she had dug for herself? Against every ounce of reason, I found myself pulling on my coat. Daniel's warning echoed in my head. She's dangerous now. She's not just your daughter anymore. But a mother's heart is a strange thing. It can't let go, even when logic screams to run. I took my cane, locked the broken door as best I could, and stepped into the cold night. The drive to the motel felt endless. Every shadow on the road looked like it was following me. Every passing car made me flinch. At last, the flickering neon sign appeared. Pinewood Inn. I parked, my stomach churning, and scanned the lot. A few beat-up cars, broken lights. The kind of place people went to disappear. And then I saw her. Claire. She stood near the stairwell, her arms wrapped tight around herself, her hair messy, her eyes red. She looked so small, so lost. Nothing like the fierce, sharp woman who had screamed at me at the funeral. For a moment I saw my little girl again. The one who used to cry for me after a nightmare. The one who believed I could fix anything. "Mom!" she whispered when I stepped out of the car. I froze. My heart ached, but my fear was stronger. Why should I believe this isn't another trick? I asked, my voice steady but cold. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because they don't need you anymore. They want me. I owe too much, Mom. I thought I could pay them off by getting the house. By getting everything from you. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough. Her voice cracked like broken glass. They said if I don't give them what they want, they'll kill me. I stared at her, my mind spinning. She had brought wolves to my door, and now they were turning on her too. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Not after what she'd done. "You brought this on yourself, Claire," I said softly. "Choices have consequences. You chose money over family. Betrayal over love." She shook her head violently, stepping closer. I was scared. "You don't know what they're like. You don't know what they'll do." I had no choice. I raised my chin. "There is always a choice. You chose the wrong one." She fell to her knees right there in the parking lot, sobbing into her hands. The sight broke me in two. No mother wants to see her child destroyed like that, even if they deserve it. I bent down slowly, my old bones aching, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Get up, Claire. We'll figure something out." For the first time in weeks, she looked up at me with something other than anger. There was fear, yes, but also hope. We walked toward my car together, her leaning on me like a child again. For a brief moment, I let myself believe maybe this was a turning point. Maybe she could be saved. But just as we reached the car, headlights flared across the lot. A black van screeched to a stop. 3 men jumped out. "Found you," one of them snarled. Claire froze. Her face went pale. My grip tightened on her arm. My heart thundered so hard I thought it might burst. And then, before I could even react, one of the men pulled something from his coat. A gun. He raised it, pointing straight at us. I never thought a mother's love could be tested so hard. From the moment Claire opened her mouth at John's funeral and told me, "Hurry up and die already," something inside me cracked. That day, I knew I had lost my daughter to greed, anger, and darkness. But the pain of betrayal only grew worse when I realized she wasn't just cruel with her words. She was willing to put me in danger, to throw me to wolves just to cover her own mistakes. Those nights of terror, those men at my door, the van at the motel. They taught me something I wish I never had to learn. Sometimes, even the people you love most can become your enemies. I gave Claire chance after chance. I held on because that's what mothers do. But in the end, she chose her path. And I had to choose mine.
Ich chose survival.
I chose peace. I chose to leave her nothing. The house that John built with his hands, the savings we worked for, the keepsakes filled with love, none of it went to Claire. Instead, it went where it could do good. Daniel, who stood by me like the son I never had. The church that fed hungry children. Neighbors who had loved and cared for me more than my own flesh and blood. Claire begged, she cried, she raged. But by then it was too late. A will doesn't lie, and neither did my heart. As I sit now in my quiet home, John's picture beside me, I feel both sorrow and peace. Sorrow for the daughter I lost long before death took her from me. Peace because I finally chose myself, my dignity, and my legacy. And if there is one lesson my story leaves behind, it is this. Blood may make someone family, but love and respect make them your true children. Never let anyone, no matter who they are, tear away your worth, your safety, or your peace. Because at the end of life, what matters most is not who shares your blood, but who stands beside you with love.